your taste buds for a ride with the Signature Snack Burger menu, featuring 5 mouthwatering cheeseburgers.
Andy, could you mute your mic? Thank you.
So this is considered multitasking.
I thought you were gone, Teresa.
Wednesday I leave.
Oh, okay.
You're going somewhere fun.
Going to Florida for 10 days.
Oh, good for you.
I'm excited.
Well, there's Morgan.
We're in Florida.
We're going to start in Tampa and work our way to Key West.
Okay, I don't know if I've written down people, but I might not be able to see everybody. So
They did not survive. Also tonight, what we're learning after Russian missiles hit that military base just 10 miles from the Polish border,
What?
killing dozens and wounding over 100 people.
Or turn your TV down.
On NATO's doorstep.
Oh yeah, I was about to mute it, and I was just about to mute it, and then you guys started talking to me.
Okay, so we've got Carolyn,
Mhm.
Jen,
Mhm.
Cheryl,
Mhm.
Randy,
Mhm.
Crystal with the C and Crystal with the K,
Mhm.
Heidi, Jan, Megan, Morgan,
All righty,
you and I.
perfect.
And the front door's open if you want.
Yes. And Barb.
I have a question, Teresa. I tried to transfer a call to Morgan using extension 13 and it would not go through. What do I need to do besides hit 13?
I don't know.
Yeah, don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
That patient calls every week. She's called every week for the past 2 months. I don't have her glasses.
Oh, that's
I
what
have
she's
told-
calling about.
I have told her every time that she's called that we will call her the moment I get them, but I don't have them. So
Yeah, I just wish I could, if I needed to transfer a call to you rather than, but that worked out doing through Peeps though, right?
yes, but that patient in particular, she just wants her glasses, but I don't have them, unfortunately. So,
I'll have to remember that name
Yeah.
if I get her again.
yep.
Yes. All right, let us pray. Dear Lord, change is hard, but we know that you are our helper. You are holding our hand as the challenges of life come our way. Help us to know that you are here with us. Help us to trust your plan, for we know that you have plans for us to prosper and not to harm us. As we grow and prosper along your path, remind us to be thankful for your love and guidance through our most challenging times. You are the source of life, happiness, and love. Thank you for being our Savior, our leader, and our protector. In Christ's name we pray for strength and guidance through changing times. Amen. All righty, so we have just one item that we'll talk about, and then we will start moving around the clinic, and we have a way of taking all of you remotely with us. So hopefully that works. We are on our way to accomplishing a goal for all of Clinic with a Heart for this year, and that is to learn more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that also affects everything all the way from the board to volunteers to patients and everything in between. And so I have an advisory committee we've gotten together once so far and brainstormed what that might mean. And I wanted to ask you all, what would you like to learn more about in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And something to think about are all the maybe unconscious biases we have and groups of people or information that you think would be really good to know in order to help you be a better volunteer here at Clinic with a Heart. So does anyone have anything that you would love to learn more about?
think it'd be nice to know a little bit more
I
about
would.
the cultures,
Some different cultural things,
Yeah.
okay?
so that we don't inadvertently do something that is offending them and not know that we're doing it.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, who else?
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say, something related to, and something about communication within the different culture groups, whether they're matriarchal or patriarchal. I mean, we try to talk to the appropriate persons, but you know, some of the hidden rules about they need to see a female provider, or, you
That's
know,
what I was
just,
gonna say.
just
Yeah.
those kind of things is very helpful.
Yeah. What else?
I would like to include more LGBTQ information. I feel that that population is also very underserved and underlooked.
That, we had one that came to the clinic and she wanted to be called Peter. So when we put it on the file, how do we put her name on the file?
What I typically do is in quotations, put their referred name.
Their preferred
However,
name?
Yes, and
Okay.
then as far as the identity part of it, I don't mark anything, just to let it be the patient's preference, however they fill out their jot form. Then if
Well,
we
that
follow
was
the jot form.
Yeah, she filled out the jot form with her female name. But then when she got to clinic, she said, I would prefer to be called Peter.
Typically then what we try to do is write quotations as on the side of how they would want to be referred to as.
Okay.
But the lesson there is that we didn't have room on the jot form to ask the question that she needed to answer. Like,
Mhm.
so we didn't ask her, how do you identify question? Or ask him, how do you identify?
Mhm.
Or them.
There is an other
them.
option. Typically, yeah.
I think she had marked female as well. So that's kind of confusing then too.
Yeah, and we're just brainstorming what we need to know more about. I think
Yeah.
that those issues will have to do a lot of study and to get it right.
Yeah. Because we don't want to offend them.
We don't want to offend anyone. No.
Good suggestion, Crystal. Thank you.
I'd like to see us understand the culture of poverty a lot more, just the struggles that people have to survive day to day. I just think it colors how people present at clinics sometimes, and it helps to understand what could be, what the struggles could be.
On that same note, Teresa, I think it's important for us to understand that they may have come from a very, I don't know, middle class something, and then were forced into poverty related to job, housing, something. And we're making assumptions anytime someone comes in. So how can we as volunteers and providers bring our thoughts to an appropriate level? I guess is what I want to say.
Just, yeah.
Have more empathy.
Meet each person where they are. I made an appointment with someone today who a registered nurse, married, kids, became a meth addict, homeless, unemployed. I mean, so
Wow.
yeah, can't guess. And she's struggling back.
Wow. So
Maybe that's an area too of addiction issues. You know, that you consider that to be diversity or inclusiveness.
absolutely. Yep. So we don't have to, I'm not going to belabor it, but if you come up with ideas, or now that you are aware that we are going to focus on this, you might see things or hear things or have suggestions about some of the directions that we take. in just making everyone more aware. I think a lot of, how often have you been asked the question, what would you like to learn about in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? So sometimes just asking the question gets your mind thinking in different directions. So if you think of anything, please email me. There is this advisory group who is going to get together again and do some research, come up with some trainings, find some videos, and all of that stuff can be, I don't know how that will be pushed out, but it could be everything from a Friday update email link to some mandatory training for everybody. We just don't know how that's going to play out, but whatever you can contribute and would like to give us your input, that would be great.
And you may know of great resources too in your roles.
Yeah. Okay. So now we can talk about the move and clinic flow. Maybe I should ask first, is there anything else anybody wants to talk about before we start talking about clinic flow? No? Okay.
Well, so I want to preface, so we'll walk through the clinic and we'll look at what rooms are. Let's think about all the times patients crisscross. How can we eliminate the crisscross, especially at the front desk and intake and discharge? That hallway is so overwhelming to walk through, especially if you're new to the clinic or you're shy or introverted or you're having some kind of trauma. That can be a lot. So as we're walking through, think about that. I'm going to take my phone and tour us. So it's going to be a strange tour. So give input that way. Hopefully this will work. And
That's a good question about the crisscross. That makes me wonder if we couldn't have intake and discharge right in this room. Move the other waiting room across the hall.
yeah,
Interesting.
there,
Yeah,
See,
that's,
there's a
I never would have thought of that. That's perfect.
mind blown already.
Well, brains are working all right.
We're in waiting room A, and Barb's saying, could this be intake and discharge rather than the intake and discharge room? So then the patient.
Rather than the waiting.
I really like that idea.
That's great. Let's see what the flow is that you have, because I have a couple of questions, ideas, but I want to see what your plan is, and then we can give input.
I'm not sure that
Thanks.
the plan is
Yeah.
there. Is that, I guess that's a good question. Do we have a plan that we are rolling out, or are we starting from scratch with this meeting?
Well, somewhere in between plan and rolling out. So when we started looking at moving offices upstairs, we have a grid here that will include something like this in the minutes of what things are and what they can become. But that's just a starting place to be open to, like making this intake and discharge instead of, so let's just be completely open-minded, shall we? That will be a struggle for me, but.
Well, your idea.
Okay. I'm gonna go across to. And also maybe as we're going along, talk about areas you think are stressors for patients or not as much hospitality, dignity and grace as we could, we're doing the screening in the hallway now for patients. I would prefer we did it someplace more private because it causes a backlog, it's noisy, and it doesn't take long.
What about that room back there?
Well, we're going to start having board meetings at the same time as a clinic too, so that'll okay. So I'm going through intake and discharge. And here's PT and Chiro. So PT and Chiro patients, Chiro's 3 times a month, PT's 1 time a month. Patients, how many times is Chiro? 3 times a month. the second and fourth Thursday and the first Monday. So any feedback about the Cairo room?
Is it bigger than it needs to be, or is it, do they need both of these beds?
Well, that's the PT table. That's the Cairo table. Any comments about the PT Cairo room? Either, nope, okay.
I think it's a really big room. I don't think they would need that big of a room. Because honestly, the PTs could use the Cairo table if we wanted to get rid of one.
And another thing I think is the hallway is very narrow back there. So if you have any crisscrossing or anything, it's a very narrow hallway.
So that's definitely, you know, there's definitely a flow problem with getting people to Cairo.
How many people do we normally have?
6 would be max.
Do we have other stuff going on?
The whole medical.
Okay. Yeah. Just like this.
Keeping an eye on.
When we started having Cairo and PT, they had 2 providers there sometimes at night. That's why there was 2 tables and the divider in between.
Yeah, and they would be doing PT and Cairo at the same time. So this is intake and discharge. I do have the feedback registered loud and clear, more privacy between tables, and Brian is donating some screens. So we will have that visual privacy at least. So in terms of location and reducing crisscross, well, making this a waiting room and that a waiting room, and then switching this with waiting room A would be.
Is waiting room A bigger than that room?
I think it is.
I thought it might be.
Is there a way we could put the tables into more of like a horseshoe? That way then when you put screens up, you can kind of do a division side by side rather than an awkward front back split and a side split.
And one of the things about putting up screens is then our clinic guides can't glance into the room and see who's available and who's not. You have to kind of walk in and walk out, and then, you know, are we missing a piece there as well? Also, with our intake room right now, we have our shopping area kind of thing. Would we want to leave that just in a waiting room, or we would again put that back into our discharge area? Just a consideration.
Yeah, I think it would go with intake and discharge, because if we left this just in a waiting room, it'd be empty and
in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good reminder flow wise, you know, as they go through discharge, to take a look at some things they might need before they leave.
Yeah. Including hats.
My goodness, it's half full again, half empty again. I just filled it up Wednesday.
It got cold. I'm going into waiting room B now. Now this is a room that could not be uglier. So we did put a call out for someone with a design eye to help us spiff up. And I mean, this room is just but ugly. I don't know another way to say it. The carpet's ugly.
I know we had talked about the TVs, putting up like a fish aquarium screensaver.
Yeah. And yeah. This used to have a what to expect video, one in English and one in Spanish. So we haven't played those since COVID. We didn't know what to expect. It has some brochure racks with hardly any brochures.
I feel like that room has a lot of more like ability to divide things if you wanted to make that intake and discharge back in the, you could, there's kind of nooks back there that you could put some people without screens that might make it more private.
If we made this intake and discharge, have we accomplished reducing a crisscross?
No.
Well, I think we need to think about the crisscross, because I think if people are going back to the waiting rooms, they're going to be coming back from intake and discharge, and you're going to have a similar crisscross.
Yeah.
I like the fact that intake and discharge being in waiting room A would keep them closer to the providers and maybe help with quickly getting them back there.
We can't hear if she's saying something.
It doesn't necessarily reduce the crisscross totally, because people are still coming back across the hall for waiting. That doesn't eliminate the crisscross, but having intake and discharge in waiting room A gets them closer to vitals and closer to providers and closer to lab. And it's just, they're just more
They
available.
they don't go from intake directly to the providers very often. They have to be in a waiting room. So the nurse or whoever is going to have to go now then, back to those back rooms to get the patients for the physicians.
Could we see what the offices are going to be utilized as? Because I have a couple thoughts on intake that way.
And one thing to keep in mind that we haven't talked about is that we do have a goal to have a daytime medical home clinic. And so this space would be that. We would have to have some offices for providers. Okay, now we're in room 1. This is Morgan's office now. So she moved from the back. She's spitting out all the paperwork for the clinic and answering the phones. Morgan, is it better to be closer?
Yes, I'm much more efficient, I would say, but I mean, I am always open to critiques. So.
Oh, no, I don't think. And the front desk could be moved. Here's room number 2, which is vitals. And we've had a lot of suggestions to have 2 vital rooms instead of 1. So then we do have this office. Number 5. This is mental health now. I don't know why mental health has otoscopes.
What's the little there?
Yeah, I could use some help. 6. This is the clinic coordinators and Crystal. Okay, so any feedback on the rooms that we've just gone in?
Is room 5 mental health only? I mean, if we don't have mental health at our clinic, can we use room 5?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
I think actually at your clinic, they did intake or did some.
Okay, that's what we were wanting to have, was a room to be able to do intake on patients that had not have paperwork done.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I was going to suggest that we use room 2, 3, and 4, all for vitals and then intake. And I realize you're tying up a nurse that way. But essentially, that would prevent some crisscross. Everybody wait in one room, and then we're ready for vitals, do intake, and then put them in, say, start in B. And then when they've done that piece, then put them in A. So then they're ready for the provider at that point. So then they're flowing from B to intake, vitals / then to A.
So are you saying the person
That was my thought.
do intake? Is that what you're saying?
Potentially.
That
Or you could have
wouldn't
2 people in there, because
Yeah.
I know there are sometimes, I know that our vitals people are not clinically oriented always, but you could actually have two people in there because sometimes you can multitask while they're taking vitals, asking some of those questions as well. Just a thought.
Okay. Well, and if you have those rooms, clinics could individually do what they would want, I would think. Wouldn't that be possible?
I want to think about the patients getting a good vital signs done if we're multitasking.
Yeah, I don't, for our clinic, I don't believe that would work real well, but you know, different clinics do different things, but
Yeah.
Well,
we
I
would want-
prefer a continuity throughout the clinics if we can. I know
Yeah.
there's going to be things specific to each clinic. Obviously, some of us have to deal with, you know, dental patients or mental health or, you know, the crisscross of that, but trying to keep it consistent throughout all clinics, because someone like myself who fills multiple roles on different nights, you know, how to know how that process goes with each clinic could be kind of complicated.
Right. Yeah, and when I was talking about vital signs, I was talking about just giving that patient the 5 minutes to sit before we do their vitals. If we're having two people in the room with them, to me, that would make my vitals shoot up.
Well,
So-
even asking the questions when they're supposed to be resting.
Right. That's us. So we want to think about that. Then this is formerly my office. And we were looking at making this another exam room just because of the size.
Could we consider putting pharmacy in there so there's less crisscross down the hall?
Yeah, there would be less crisscross. Here's the size of the pharmacy. So this was an exam room at one time. So
Right,
it's,
and make that back into an exam room.
this is a much smaller exam room. So that's, do we need a larger exam room or are we?
Teresa, when I talked to the contractor when he was there, he said that the farther down the hall we get, the harder it is to hook up water, because it has to drain. So he said the lab would be better as an exam room because you could hook it up to drain to the same drain that the bathroom drains to.
So here's the lab. So
Teresa?
So I don't know.
Teresa?
Yeah.
So for mental health on Thursdays, a thought was that using one of the offices with a window was a helpful safety measure when we have a client who's erratic and the provider might want to crack the blinds so that we can see what's going on in mental health, even though they still have privacy and we can't hear it. That's no longer an option with having it in Brandy's old office, and the provider is kind of trapped. Like, you know, if something were to happen, just the way it's set up now, Marsha, the dietitian for hypertension, pointed out to me that she did not want to sit behind the desk in there. So she sat by the door and had the patient sit behind the desk because she didn't want to feel trapped.
Yeah. Okay, so that would put mental health back where it was in my old office. And then the lab becomes, well, where's the lab go then?
Would it be possible to switch your office, your previous office, Teresa, with the lab? It seems like there's a little bit more space in there and you still get the window for mental health. And then you don't get a lot of crisscross with patients going back and forth. Or even doing lab with pharmacy in your old office.
So,
which
I don't think you
that
could
would
do
work.
lab.
But who needs water? What are we talking about water here?
oh, so part of the consideration here is planning for that medical home.
Okay.
So I have a contractor looking at what it would be to put in sinks in each of the exam rooms.
Okay.
So Brandy met with them. So the contractor saying where the lab is would be a better spot for a sink for an exam room. So then we would move the lab, and Jen's saying put mental health in a room with blinds, but then we don't have enough space for the lab if we move the lab out.
And I don't think that's an absolute must by any means, because we have erratic patients that go into regular exam rooms. So it's not a must. It was just a thought.
I'm
Well,
wondering if we're gonna do construction, could we just change a door out so we have a window on a door with blinds on it? And then you could just change a door of one of those rooms, and then you would leave, you wouldn't you could put mental health wherever you wanted as long as there was a window in the door.
That's a good point. And one thing to consider is maybe fire rated doors too, instead of made out of twigs.
Yeah.
These have a 1-minute burn time in case of fire.
I know our pharmacist really likes to be back by the physicians closer because, they have questions both ways, them to her and her to them.
Yep.
Ours does too.
And she doesn't need very much room. So the smaller room works pretty good for her and likes being back by the physicians.
Yeah. Okay, but so what I've just heard though, in the changes we made is we're moving the pharmacy back to where mental health moved. So we can have the exam rooms closer together and plumbing closer together. And they used to be in room number 5 moons ago, right? 2 moons ago. Is that too far?
Well, it's just not ideal, but I mean, you just have to look at what's more important, but that was just their thoughts. I know it was our pharmacist. She was really glad to be back there, but not a have to have.
No, and I have heard really good feedback from pharmacists about being here, being a resource. And I do see them interacting more with providers than they did when they were down the hall.
Well, and providers really, really rely on them too. I mean, a lot of them use their knowledge to ask them questions too, so.
For the patients, this is an area of backlog and stand in the hall. So that feels undignified when we have them. If I'm in here, I'm worried someone's standing outside listening to me. So that's something to consider too. When they were down the hall, at least we could put a chair right outside, but that's something to weigh too. Okay, we have the silly sink in the hallway.
Yeah.
Considerations to bring the PPS.
And then what would we do with PT and Cairo? So then we have exam room 11, 13, the big one, 14, exam room, 15, exam. Is there a goal at all to get provider assistants their own office? It'd be nice to have a space other than a closet. Any suggestions for provider assistants?
If we have the pharmacy as an exam room, we could use one of the smaller exam rooms as the provider assistants. Probably room 14, since it's kind of centralized.
Why do they need their own room? I'm just wondering. I mean, they're usually not sitting down. They're usually running around the clinic and just need a place for charts and such.
Yeah, I agree. They're not in a room. They'll be out.
Our provider assistance does not use the clinic. She's out in the hall going from door to door a lot of times.
And anytime I've offered, do you want to use an exam room that's open? I still find them in the closet. I mean, that's okay. But we could make the closet better. We could revamp the closet.
My people like using the extra exam room rather than the closet.
There you go. Here's the kitchen. Oops, we're missing.
We could do like a stand-up counter in the.
I think, yeah, a fold-up counter to put charts on. or just to make the doors a little less cumbersome. The
Yep.
doors seem to get in the way, and I think that's part of the trouble of using that closet.
Or a counter that is up like this when they're using.
Here's our volunteer check-in, scanner, volunteer stuff and snack room. Any suggestions on this? Not that I can think of. Part of a pediatric state there, that's interesting. And then this room, we wanted to make into a training room. It looks like a bomb went off in it, and there's a office back here that if we had a day clinic, this could be the provider's office.
No. That also looks like a good conference room if you wanted to have a conference room.
Like for patients, Heidi, is that?
Yeah, or just if like when you're having meetings and you need a conference room or something with a table, it seems like it's a little bit more private back there. And
No, we don't do ice here anymore. We'll have to take off there's good stuff on it that needs to be unscrewed, but I don't know how any of it works. And then the big heavy metal pieces go in the garbage.
Teresa, I think with that space, it just kind of needs some reorganization, some reloving, because it's cluttered, but it's unnecessary clutter. It would be a much more useful training area if we were able to kind of get rid of some stuff.
Yep. Okay, so now that we've walked through, we'll go back into the room and talk about any other flow kind of
that room that you're currently in, if we did that as intake or discharge and had two doors and two entries and exit doors right there, would that be better flow? I'm just throwing that out there. Since there's two doors,
yeah,
there may not be as much crisscross. If there's two doors, you could take, coming down from the doctor, you could take them right into discharge that way versus coming back around the front.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Our team our team always used that room as discharge, and we loved it because that was their final place to go, and there was room for their supplies. And then when they left, they were ready to go out of that room. And now when we have intake and discharge in the same room, it's hard to know who's doing intake and who's doing discharge because you're doing it both at the same time.
Do you have separate people doing intake and separate people doing discharge, Carolyn?
That's what I was just wondering.
We used to, and we could again. Yeah, and, they'd start an intake and then they would move over to discharge and leave a person in intake.
Because ours do both.
Yeah, so do ours.
Well, like I say, our nurses moved because it was just an easy way to have a final room to be done, but.
I think that wouldn't be a bad idea, having intake and discharge be two separate areas. You could easily see, if you had people available to do either intake or discharge. And then I don't know if the nurses would be agreeable to moving once we have everyone into the clinic and we need more help in discharge, moving rooms.
The problem is you got people starting to discharge while you still got people coming in.
Yeah, see that
right, we have at least one person in each area.
Yeah, if you have 4 nurses, we started out with like 3 in intake and 1 in discharge. And then by the time intake was being completed, then they could move over to the room to do discharge.
We'd have to have more nurses.
Well, how many do you have now?
3.
Yeah. Well, and 4 with students. I mean, you have 4 slots filled, right?
Yeah, if the students are there, yeah.
Well, that's how we have 4 people. And like I say, we have 3 start out in intake, 1 didn't discharge. So that 1 can start, because if they get on time and you have a fast patient, we have people ready for discharge before intake has got a place for them now.
So do
And
you have 4 nurses now?
Yes. Oh, and sometimes the 4th nurse is, they're having us have that as a student. So the
Okay,
students
'cause-
would be an intake with 2 other nurses.
Because we only have 3 slots on ours for nurses. So I could easily add one if we
Yeah,
did
well,
that.
Okay, yeah, we have 4.
So some things, maybe think about too, how could a process change affect less crisscrosses or solve some of the problems too, not necessarily a space change. And I think this will take watching this recording probably 2-3 times to kind of get all that feedback and walk through again, and then maybe present back at COG a proposal for the space change. This is not an emergency, to remember that. And all our furniture is on wheels. Isn't that handy? So before we put up those dividers or anything, we'll make sure we like where things are.
So the 2 of you moved upstairs? Did anybody else?
So who moved upstairs? So Brandy's upstairs, Isella, who's.
We could go up there right now
Oh,
on your phone.
oh, I just. Okay. We'll go upstairs, but Isella's up there. Brandy, Julie, Deepa, and Teresa.
And Tanya.
And Tanya. Did you want to see upstairs?
No.
I don't even know where it is upstairs, so that might be nice in case I come at an off time and I need to find you.
Let's do it.
While you're going up those steps, anybody got any ideas? We had a patient really bonk his head on the steps.
Yeah, that's really a danger. I've done that before.
I know.
You probably can duck underneath, Cheryl, but.
No, I don't even have to duck. What are you talking about?
Can we put those little foam pads on the corners of the, like a little baby proofing type of foam corner?
You did that already?
Would
Did you
they
say
let
you
us
did that?
do that? Would they let us do that?
Yeah, I think that's an idea.
Oh, it's an idea. We haven't done, I thought you said they'd done that.
Teresa, are you connected to audio?
Now, I thought Teresa said too that they were going to have board meetings at the same time we're having clinic. Did she say that or did I misunderstand her?
I thought I heard her say that too.
So then we
Yes.
couldn't,
I did
Yes,
too.
said that.
we couldn't use that room then if they were
Uh-uh.
they were having board meetings in there.
Unless there's another room they're having a board meeting in.
Yeah.
They could probably have board meetings upstairs as well. It probably doesn't have to be downstairs in clinic space.
Okay.
Teresa, we can't hear anything you're saying.
She's going back downstairs.
I can't see anything either. Can anybody else see her?
No,
Okay.
She's going back in the main door.
I can't see anything.
where are you seeing her?
Where it says Teresa Harms, there's her face.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Did,
don't see anything.
Teresa, I think your audio got either disconnected or wasn't connected to the device quite right.
Anybody, did the video show?
The video showed, but it just, the audio, there was no audio.
Okay. Well, that was the upstairs at any rate.
Oh, I didn't see anything. I didn't see
I
any
didn't-
video upstairs.
I didn't either. I've been up there, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
Well,
up in the next one.
next time you come to the clinic, we'll give you a walkthrough.
There we go.
Yeah, any other feedback about space utilization? And I'm all for experimenting too, so like trying intake and discharge in a different room.
I'm just wondering about the room that you guys are in now, if there's a way to do like a horseshoe with the tape, with tables, and I don't know what people's thoughts are on for like intake or something.
I think that's a good idea.
Especially having two doors makes that room more accessible.
And indoor and, yeah, you know, when the pandemic started, we made the hallway one way. That
Yeah,
actually did help with flow.
Yeah.
For those who were compliant with the signs.
we still do that. We still do that.
I have a question. I don't know, is there a way with patients who come into intake, do they, after they've done vitals and they go to intake, can we start seating them in the exam rooms when the provider comes in? So then when the provider's in, they can just go? Like what you do at a normal doctor's office?
Sometimes that works okay, but you don't, it depends on, some of them need to see a specific physician. And so you don't want them waiting in a room a long time if that physician isn't you know what I'm saying, that we're waiting a long time for the physician.
Especially when you've got some physicians won't see kids and some won't see adults.
It's hard to know always when they're gonna get here, because then you can, as soon as the physician gets there, you know who it is, then you can bring the appropriate patient to them. Where if they were already in the room, there wouldn't be a choice.
Honestly, if I had to sit in that room for as long as some of our patients have to sit in the waiting room, I think somebody forgot me.
Yeah, I think you're right on that too.
Well, that
Unless
happens.
you left the door open.
I guess I was just thinking of crowding in the waiting rooms. Sometimes some people don't like being in the waiting rooms too long because they feel like they get crowded. And then we have issues of people complaining that they're too close to others. So maybe for some people who would prefer a little bit more privacy, that could be an option, or I'm just throwing out ideas.
Mhm. It would work sometimes if you knew who was coming for sure and what kind of patient it was. Because
And I
we've done
think
that.
we do
We've done
that
that
if it's getting crowded in the waiting room. We move people. If there's getting too many
Right.
people in the waiting room, we move people, but otherwise we usually try not to.
That's how we do it too, Heidi.
Do the waiting rooms get too crowded now? That we have
Not on our,
appointments?
not on our night.
I think it's way better.
Yeah, I haven't felt like it's gotten really crowded the way we're doing things now.
My concern just comes in when we start having patients start sitting out in the main hallway. We have a lot of patient charts that sit out there, as well as patient information that will get disclosed, and that can be a HIPAA breach.
Well, we shouldn't be talking about patient information in a hallway. That's a different problem. So.
And the chart should be turned backwards so no one can see them too, but.
We had a patient this time that she wanted another chair in there because she said there was too many people in there. She was sitting on a chair and everybody else had their own chair. I don't know why she wanted another empty chair, but.
Just to make sure there was space in between.
Well, maybe to put her purse on it. I don't know.
And I think maybe if we post in the waiting rooms that, you know, chairs need to be 6 feet apart unless you're in the same household, or, you know, having the tape on the floor where the chairs need to go. I think sometimes they get rearranged when we have multiple people from the same household and chairs get kind of clustered together.
Yeah.
Yeah, families will tend to move them when there's 3 or 4. And so then we are short of chairs for individuals.
We did take the dots up, and the dots also left a residue on the carpet. So the carpet cleaner had to come and hand scrub all the residue dots off. So that was just exciting.
Something else to consider, just because we were talking about putting potentially patients in exam rooms. Is there anything that says that the same provider has to be in the same room all night? Can't the provider go to whatever patient is most appropriate for them according to the provider assistant?
If we're putting patients in the rooms ahead of time, usually the provider does move rooms. And there are some clinic nights where that's how it's done, that the provider is mobile and we just keep our script pad and our stuff with us. And we go to whatever room has a patient, we just go to whatever room the provider assistant tells us to go to. And I don't mind working either way, but I don't know. I know Dr. Jones has one room and one room only, and that's how he operates. He doesn't leave that chair. But
I think the question is when someone has a license limitation that's volunteering that night and taking up a room
Yes.
with someone who can't be seen until X person comes. So it's just that math and the serendipity of getting the right people all in the same place at the, especially when school physical season happens.
Which seems to be
Which is
all year now.
365, yeah. Okay, and you'll probably have a lot of midnight thoughts now when you fall asleep tonight at 8 because it's daylight savings time. But so when you think of other ideas, I'm leaving town on Wednesday and I won't be back until 10 days. So, but go ahead and send me emails with any ideas or thoughts, and we'll take a look at the recording. I'm glad we're recording this because it's a lot of good feedback. So any other last ahas? I'm learning with the meeting. How'd you like the meeting out? Did that work out well? Our new way to hybrid meet?
I like it.
I like it. It kind of focuses on who's talking, and yet we can still see the whole room. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Good purchase, Teresa.
Woo-hoo. Right on. Well, thank you.
Okay.
We'll be in touch. Thanks. I'll send out
Okay.
minutes.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. I couldn't last time because I had to take